Don't believe the hype. Read the type. This is TYPBST.
Take a look, it's in a book. It's TYPBST, baby.
The audience needs to see your
My hands in the
your
air.
hand signals. That's quite entertaining.
Yeah.
One day maybe we'll be on video.
Yeah. Maybe one day, once we get our subscribers and funding up.
Yeah, maybe we'll have our own studio.
We could.
Pipe dreaming, but maybe we'll see.
Well, first it starts with TYPBST, so we gotta make this a good episode, so people will want to share it.
Yeah, definitely. And they'll want more. More content. So
Yeah.
I know the book we got in question is one that I have not read, but I've learned a lot just from listening to you talk about it, because you hyped this bad boy up.
Oh no. Oh boy.
I mean, in a good way. Like so for the book is called How to Read a Book. And
by Mortimer Adler.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to try and say his name because I didn't know how.
Oh, Mortimer Adler.
And Charles Van Doren.
Mm-hmm.
The OCD-ish stuff in me of like, I got to read a whole book from front to back has, you've kind of, just from talking about how to read a book, you've kind of made me question like, oh yeah, I never really thought about it.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'll give you like the backstory. So, I go to the Ontario Christian Bookstore a lot, which is in Streetsville. Shout out to Lance.
Yeah, it's great spot.
Yeah, it's really good. A lot of good books. A lot of they got really good kids books to adult books and a diverse
content.
Yeah, in regards to denominational leanings and theological leanings.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I was at the bookstore and I asked him, "What's the most important book in here besides the Bible?" And he said, "Oh, that's easy." He's like, "How to read a book." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "What do you mean? I already know how to read a book." And he's like, "Pa, you probably don't." And I was like, "Okay, well, and so he said, well, how do you know a book is good, Darnell?" And I'm like, "You read the back?" He's like, "No, you read table of contents." He's like, "Oh, so there you go." So for the listeners, there's going to be a lot of freebies and becoming more critical and better readers in reading theory to help you get the most out of your book. So especially if you're a student going into school this September, and the readings are coming, take heart. Because there is hope that you don't have to read every single page to understand what's going on.
This doesn't apply to fiction.
Well,
but I mean, there's a different speed reading approach.
Yeah.
For those books.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So this is more so nonfiction, literature, prose, expository type of works. So okay, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that I found interesting about the book and that was helpful was like looking at active reading. So part of it is, your approach. So expect more from yourself in the text. So part of it is like just being aggressive as opposed to being passive in your reading. So the point we want to emphasize here is that this book is about the art of reading for the sake of increased understanding. So they get into nuancing reading for understanding and then reading for information. Right? So I hope you guys are taking notes. All right? Because you're like, wait, information, understanding. No, but it's pretty interesting. So check this out. So reading for information is reading what is thoroughly intelligible to us. Reading for understanding is reading something you do not completely understand. So learning is understanding more, not remembering more information. I'll read that point again. Learning is understanding more, not remembering more information. So like when we go, we take an exam and you cram, you cram like for the night before, hopefully not. But if you're cramming and then you get into the exam, and what happens? Everything just falls out onto the paper. Just everything,
word vomit.
Yeah, that's what we call it. Just everything just all over the paper. And then as soon as you get out of there, like it's like your brain is just saying, "Okay,
erase,
erase, Like I need space for other. I need
Control,
my brain.
Alt, delete.
You forget. You don't even know anything, so you weren't really learning. So learning is for understanding, and I would also add I used to go to Tyndale, and what used to annoy me was we'd take these deep theological classes, and this is interesting. So we take these deep theological classes, and people who don't necessarily believe or understand the doctrine or the theology, they memorize it, what needs to be put on the paper, and then when they leave the class, and then you're asking them about theology or doctrine, they're like,
I don't know.
They don't know, or they don't care, or it's not being applied, and you're just like, okay, so I thought we learned this already. Yeah, but that was just for the exam. I passed it, I got an A, but you look like you understand the doctrine of sin, and you really don't. You just passed the test. But anyways, so the other nuances to understanding the difference between information and understanding is the difference is being able to remember and being able to explain.
Or apply.
Right? Yep. And then information comes from exercising your memory, and then enlightenment is knowing what the info means and being able to explain why. So that last point again, enlightenment is, or understanding is knowing what the info means and being able to explain why.
Yeah, I think that's I think back to like days when I was in school. I always had this weird experience where like the first 30 minutes of studying was the hardest. And it would just be so distracted. I kept having to reread things because to your point, I'm learning something, I got to understand it. I got to reread it. And then all of a sudden at 30 minutes, I could spend the next 2 hours just absolutely crushing with a level of efficiency. Like I was in the zone. I just keep going. I keep, and I don't have to reread things. I just keep, and the reason I bring that up is to say how much of our reading is, we don't take the time to be like, hold on, I got to read that again. Mm-hmm. And, I would say, and part of it's my OCD thing that I was referring to at the beginning. It's oh, I read that page. Okay, next page. I'm just checking the box of I read this book, as opposed to what am I learning? And I think, we'll get into it a little bit more to some extent with okay, what's the table of contents? What do I want to learn from this book? You're what parts of this book do I need to learn? What parts of this book do I think I already know? And therefore, focusing on reading the stuff that's already intelligible to us. So you're almost just skimming it to see okay, is this what I think it is? Do I already understand what this is saying? Right now I'm reading a book called Meetings Suck. Okay. It's just it's essentially how to, saying the subtitle, I don't have it in front of me, but is along the lines of how do we convert this, very thing that we do all the time at work into a really productive means for the work environment. And the idea, so right away it's the bookmark in the book actually is an employee needs to focus on these pages or these chapters. The CEO needs to focus on these chapters. And I just thought that was really, really interesting because, that guy's almost implementing the how to read a book thing before you even open the book. He's telling you these are the chapters you need to focus on. So
yeah, it's good stuff. So the next point is, or the next section he talks about is reading as learning. So learning by instruction versus discovery. And basically he talks about aided learning and unaided learning, right? So he says listening is learning from a teacher who is present, while reading is learning from one who is absent. We must know how to make books teach us well.
Interesting.
Bro, that's deep.
Yeah.
Right? So that's unaided learning. So when you have somebody there with you, you can ask them, you're my study buddy. You're my
Points
TA.
of clarification.
Yeah, like, yo,
challenging.
Joel, what's this?
Did you understand it this way? I understand.
Yeah.
Versus
Right? So I don't have to do any thinking because you're there to answer my questions.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're reading a book, the person is not, you have to learn from the author. So you have to ask good questions from the book and find those answers from the book. Mm-hmm. So that way you're gaining your discovery. And when these principles really come into play, especially like we know this when we read the Bible.
Yep.
Right? And we all know that moment where, it's one thing, you're sitting in a sermon or Bible study. It's another thing, you're reading it for yourself and you're like, oh, shoot. You're like, oh, frig. You're like kind of like David.
Heavy.
It is I. You read it and you're like, you read the section and you're just like, oh, frig, this is me. This is me. Oh, Lord, forgive me. This is all me. And it just rocks you and it's just with you. That's unaided learning. Well, of course, we know the Holy Spirit comes in, but
that's aided learning.
Yeah,
but,
all right, yeah,
but different,
different way. But
I mean, how many people read the Bible with that aspect of like, I read it, right? It's to some extent they're taking the listening approach of and not because I would say if you're unintentional in the way that you're reading the Bible, the Holy Spirit's
no,
totally. that conviction's not going to come because you're not really reading it. You're just reading it.
Yeah, and then you're not.
So I think your point there still does apply in that taking the unaided approach of like you got to know how the book's going to teach you.
And then it goes back to our first point, right? You're not getting information, you're getting understanding. Right? So now you're not just remembering a date or a time, but you're like, yo, I get it. This makes sense. Now it's yours. That information is yours. You know what I mean? So he has a quote and he says, if you ask a living teacher a question, he will probably answer you. If you are puzzled by what he says, you can save yourself the trouble of thinking by asking him what it means. If, however, you ask a book a question, you must answer it yourself. In this respect, a book is like nature or the world. When you question it, it answers you only to the extent that you do the work of thinking and analysis yourself. So it's kind of like...
So where was that from the book?
Page 15.
Okay.
And it's like kind of like weightlifting in a way. You really have to just do the work to get the results that you want from the book. And like his first point, you just got to be an aggressive reader.
Yeah, and like that was kind of like, go back, read it again, read it again, read it again. If you're puzzled by it, right? Like, it might be like, okay, do I got to look at the sentence structure a little bit more deeply? Do I got, you read that paragraph again and again. Like, how is the argument that you're, or whatever it is that you're reading? Okay, let me work through it slowly. Okay, I understand point 1. Okay, I understand point 2. Yeah. Maybe that requires you to start Googling to supplement.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention this at the start of the breakdown, but how to read a book isn't a book you read from back to front. It's a reference book on how to read different types of literature.
Okay.
So we're like, oh man, well, technically, if you read the section on how to read history, how to read newspapers, how to read economic books, how to read analysis books, how to read construction books, right? How to read at different speeds, different reading levels. So they're different types of tools, that you would pick according to your leisure. So reading comprehension, how to be a better with reading comprehension. So when I was applying to be a correctional officer a while back, and I had to take my testing, there was reading comprehension. So it's a time test that you have to take, and there's a reading comprehension component to it. And so, I wasn't doing a good job of getting through the test in time because my reading comprehension was all over the place. And then, I read this book, and it basically said, okay, the best way to do reading comprehension is to read the questions first. Right? So because
now you know what information you're looking for.
Yeah. I'm like, of course. I'm like, don't see. So these are things like the book is just very simple. You're like, oh, wait a minute. Of course. Right? Of course. So you read the questions.
That's a no-brainer.
Well, yeah, but I guess I had no brain at the time because I was reading the text first, and then I'm going through it. I'm like, wait, where was that again?
Yeah.
So I was working backwards, and I was messing myself up. But it was really cool to be like, okay, so I studied the questions, and then I went in and aggressively attacked. So I was like, okay, I'm looking for this answer. Found it. Boom. Found this one. Boom. And I flew through the section. So that was really helpful. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, the next section he talks about is inspectional reading. And he kind of makes a distinction that some books aren't worth reading. He lets it know up front. You have to know what those books are, right? And be able to discern what's worth your time and which one's not worth your time. So he says, so there's some tips you can use to get to do a pre-reading of a book to find out if it's worth your time. So one way to tell, so there's 6 steps to finding out if it's worth your time. The title page. So the title page and the preface. What kind of book is it? So the preface is helpful because it tells you what kind of book it is. And then point 2, study the table of contents. A good idea of what the author is trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Makes sense.
Yeah. Which before, I definitely didn't approach books that way.
Yeah, because you can see the structure of the book.
Yeah, I know.
And the table, I'm like, of course. Oh,
yeah, I know.
The whole. I'm telling you, man. That's why I keep talking about this book. Is like when you read it, you're like, of course. What am I?
Yeah.
When we go to buy books at the bookstore, it doesn't matter what it is. You flip to the table of
Usually
contents.
it's like, do I like the author, and
Yeah.
what is the subject he's talking about?
Right. Yeah. And then the next point 3 says, check the index. When you see the terms listed that seem crucial, look up at least some of the passages. So, we pick up a book and we're like, okay, what am I picking up this book for?
Yeah.
Right? So you pick up the book and then you flip to the index and you find the topics that you're looking for.
And if the passages on those indexes suck, you might want to pick up a different book.
Yeah, well, but you got to the heart of the issue right then and there. You're like, okay, does this book have what I'm looking for?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm suffering with depression.
You don't want to wait till page 50.
Yeah, or you know what I mean? Yeah, or I just had this really bad breakup. Let me just get to this point about the breakup section.
Yeah.
You read the breakup section, you're like, okay, no, that's
not going to help me. Yeah,
I'm done. I'm going to save myself $25 and go,
Yeah.
drown my sorrows in a
Pick up a different copy of Chicken Soup
burger
for
and
the
fries.
Soul. I'm just kidding.
Right? Okay, and then the next one is point 4. Read the publisher's blurb, or also known as a dust jacket. Authors try to summarize as they can the main points in their book. These efforts should not go unnoticed. So read
So that
the
would
jackets.
be like the inside panels,
Yeah.
right?
Of the jacket, yeah. Of this.
Obviously, this would be a hardcover.
Yeah, but he's saying that like he was saying like authors can't resist summarizing their book in the jacket. He's just like it's just something they love that
They love doing.
Yeah, so if you really like want to get it, and you have the jacket of the book, it's all there. And then point 5, look at the chapters that seem to be pivotal to the argument. Look for summary statements, opening or closing pages.
Mm-hmm.
So look at the chapters that seem pivotal. So like you're looking at the table of contents.
What stands out to you? What chapters are the parts you really want to get to?
Yeah.
Read the intro, read the conclusion,
And read the intro, read the conclusion.
Yeah. It's
Boom.
I mean, essentially think of every chapter as like a mini essay.
Yeah.
Right. What were you taught to do in your intro and your conclusion of your essay?
Yeah. Right.
Right. Summarize your points.
Yes. So your conclusion is summarizing the intro, and you're like, okay, wait, this is what I was looking for, or what I'm not looking for. And lastly, read the last 2 pages or the epilogue. You don't want to miss this. So reading the epilogue of the book.
Why? What do you like? What did you take away from that?
Well, again, it's basically your epilogue is the summary of like the conclusion.
Yeah. Almost like an application of the conclusion.
Yeah.
Or like, the person's kind of taking it one more step.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that makes a lot of sense.
And again, it's a summary. It's just a short, condensed summary. We're like, okay, lastly, this is what I want to do.
It'll just give you insight more and more as to like all of these things combined will really give you a good, spending 5 minutes in the bookstore, taking in all these things in order to go, should I buy this book?
Yeah, and even then you realize technically now this is pretty cool because like now you're like, okay, this is worth my time. Like all the other stuff I can read because now everything you're like, okay, yeah, this looks like this is going to be a really good read. I want to know what else this book has versus actually no, it's not it's not answering the questions that I have.
Yeah, this isn't the right book for the questions you're asking.
Right. You know what I mean? So it's been pretty good. And so the next section is how to be a demanding reader, right? So what is the book about as a whole, right? That's what you're really trying to ask. What is being said in detail and how? Is the book true? And what of it? Why does the author think it's important to know these things? So to get more out of a book, these are questions you want to be asking.
So it's kind of like, is this essentially summarize, like after reading those chunks in the last section we talked about, these are kind of the questions you're asking
to get more.
To again help you answer the question of like, is this the right book?
Yeah.
And then while you're reading it, digging for these pieces of information, assuming you've made the conclusion this is the right book.
Yeah, and then he goes on to say, reading a book on any level beyond the elementary is essential and an effort on your part to ask it questions. That should never be forgotten, and that is why there is all the difference in the world between the demanding and the undemanding reader. The latter asks no questions and gets no answers.
That's
deep.
This section makes me think about this idea of like, I've heard someone say it, I don't know who, it's like, I'd rather read 10 books 10 times than 100 books. So that like the idea of being like, what that book is giving you. Right. So like, in this sense, being a demanding reader, by reading that book, a really good book 10 times, you're consuming it. You're being consumed by that information. Obviously you're making sure you're picking 10 quality books. And yeah, so I don't know. That's just, this is resonating with that perspective.
Yeah. And it's, when I was reading that, it reminded me of something that I naturally do that I guess, I don't know if, God has blessed me with a gift and a curse. So I have difficulties understanding things. So I always have to ask a lot of questions. So when I read the Bible, I'm always critical of reading my Bible. Like I'm always, why this? I don't understand this. What does this mean? So it's hard for me to get through a passage because I don't understand it. So I always have to be asking the questions. But with those questions, the Bible always provides me with answers. And the more I began to do that, the more I began to become more knowledgeable and understanding of the Bible and theology. And that's how, and so people who are wondering how I know so much theology and so forth and understand the doctrine is because I didn't understand it. Yeah, I didn't understand it. So the way how I was reading was, I just kept asking questions, and then the Bible is self-sufficient, so it'll always give you the answers if you're looking for it. And that's what helped me become a better theologian.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well, and it's helpful, but it's just one of those things we want to make sure that, like we're asking questions. And there are people who read the Bible and don't ask questions. They'll just read it and just breeze through but not get answers. And that's why, when people send me articles or I'm reading other books outside of the Bible, I do the same thing. And this has helped me with Sixth Sense Report, right? So when we do our research and we're reading these articles, those same principles I was learning from reading the Bible when I'm
why this, that?
Is this answering this? Is this answering this? Is this answering this?
Yeah.
So it's not me being, the word is a sophist. So sophistry is, philosophers who would, go into the public square and they would only ask questions, not caring about the answers, trying to trip people up. So I'm not doing sophistry, when I'm asking people questions, trying to trip you up, but I'm really asking because I need understanding because I don't understand the content.
Or you're picking at it to help you comprehend what's going on.
Comprehend it. Yeah. So I'm not I'm not yet doing practicing sophistry or nihilistic and not believing that there's no, or being an agnostic, not believing there are answers out there. You're just saying, oh, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this?
But
you're
just
not
raising
listening to
doubts
answer.
in order to not come to a conclusion.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So those principles were helpful, and then
it sounds almost like, I like when I hear you say this. Also, it's like I think of people who read on a surface level. They're just like you said, they just read the Bible and like don't try to understand it. It's almost like to some extent, it sounds like you almost can't do that because you're like, I have no idea what I just read. If you did. Whereas like some people almost too comfortable with the fact that they probably don't understand. Yeah. They're just like, oh, I got, this out of the 5 verses I read, I picked up one thing that just was like, oh, cool.
And even like there are people, because, I teach Bible study, and, there are some people who and this is them, they said this to me in their honest approach to, reading, and especially reading the Bible. There's an arrogance they have come with. I already know this. I already know this. I already know this. But then, when I ask them the question, information versus understanding, right?
Yeah.
They don't know. And like, I'm like, okay, so what is faith? Or what is atonement? They'll be like, okay, why did Jesus come to die for our sins? You know what I mean? Like, they're like, oh, yeah. And you're really pushing, like, okay, do you understand it, or are you just memorizing
a verse?
Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's pretty interesting. And lastly, how to make a book your own. And these are just the points I'll leave you guys with, because I don't want to, can't give away the whole book. But these are things that I found the most helpful. So how to make a book your own. Underline major points. And this is for writing in your book, right? So it's funny. So I know some of my students are listening, and I get on them. I get on them about their books being neat. Your books should not be neat. They should be messy.
Unless it's a textbook and you're trying to resell it. Make your notes in a page.
Well, not even, because even that's helpful for the people.
I don't know. I'm like, I know me. Yeah. I was always like, oh, I'm gonna resell this textbook, and all my notes were like, I literally rewrite sections of the book in my notebook.
Okay, that's good.
But but I think the same point applies, right? Like, it depends on how you study, right? Like, if you're gonna have your book super neat, you need to have a notebook with literally passages rewritten.
Yeah. No, right.
But I mean, I digress. But
no, you're right. So like, and I'm always pleading with them, like, okay, when we're going to read through this book, guys, make sure you're writing in your books. And, their books will be like nice and neat. Sometimes some books are really nice. Some books, you know what I mean? Some books are just nice.
Well, like a hardcover book, I like it. And then it's like, beautiful. Why would I write in it?
Yeah,
it looks so nice.
Right,
it's pretty.
Yeah, but I'm always pleading with them to like, I'm like, hey guys, make sure you're writing in your book. But they're like, Darnell, but well, okay, how about I write it in my phone? How about I write notes on the paper? Right? Or how about I write it in my phone? You know what my answer is? People steal phones. They don't steal books. I'm a lie? Right?
True.
And you know what else? You know what else I say to them? I said, you know what that Joe's still laughing. It's a fact though.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, don't write stuff in your phone. Don't put it in a tablet. Don't type it out. Don't email it to yourself. Don't put it on a piece of paper because it gets washed out in the laundry in your pocket.
But I mean, I would say the one thing, there is definitely value in rewriting things, because I find for me, like, the act of rewriting it, there's an aspect of like, I know
remembering it,
right? But that's why I made the comment about a notebook. Like, sure, if you literally want to be reading a book and making notes on it, like, that's a different, because you're almost like, okay, you're almost like journaling on what you learned. Okay, but that's almost like the next level.
Yeah, but my response to them, especially with notebook, even like, I would say, no, don't even get a notebook. Well, yeah, but your point is good, but what I would say is, what also happens when you write in your book? It becomes an heirloom.
Yeah.
That's an heirloom, bro. You know what I mean? Like, no, when you write in your book, people are getting the thoughts of Mortimer Adler and Joel Nikoloff.
Of what you thought was important.
Right.
What stood out to you.
But again, like, Mortimer's talking about, you reading a book is you having a conversation with the author as you're writing into it, and you are being enlightened. And I said to Tyra, I have the book Mortification of Sin. Mortification of Sin and Temptation by John Owen. And it's a pretty hefty book because John Owen is a pretty hefty writer. And so I read the book and I put a lot of notes in there. It was a couple years back, and so I'm like, okay, man, let me jump back in this book, bro.
Reading your own notes,
reading my commentary, saved my life, bro, because I read a passage by John Owen and it went over my head. I didn't even understand what I just read, and it happens with John Owen. You can read stuff and you don't even know what you just read. And then at the bottom had my commentary. And I was just like, whoa, this is good stuff. I'm like, man, I can't believe I wrote this. I'm like, man, I've gotten dumber. Like, that's it. That was my conclusion. I got dumber. I felt terrible. I'm like, yo, this was me? No, and you know what I mean? I felt like, yo, I was that on point and I was that accurate and thoughtful. I just read this page just now and nothing came to my mind. There was nothing there.
But I mean, it's also, like you said, heirloom, but it's also like a time capsule.
Yes.
Right? Like, because, I mean, they say this with the Bible too, right? Like, how many times you read the same passage at a different point in your life and it has a totally different application, or you comprehend it at a whole different level. Because, I mean, think of it as like, a teenager, an adult, a parent, that passage in the Bible is going to have vastly different meaning when you're barely responsible for yourself, bro. When you start to be responsible for yourself, and when you're responsible for, you plus how many people,
bro,
as an adult, as a parent.
4 words. When I read, but I was in this Tyra, I read my commentary, and I'm like, man, practice what you preach. Because I'm reading this thing, and I'm like, man, I need to practice what I preach. You know what I mean? Like you just see your insights and you're like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. So I'm a hypocrite and I'm not applying this book. You know what I mean? So, but anyways, let me give you guys,
I was
let me give you guys the
we
point.
just totally, we were on point 1, underline. And then,
so see, but guys, see what Joel said in the intro? He says, Darnell brags about the book. I hear a lot. So here I am bragging and talking about the book. But anyways, lastly, how to make a book your own. So first one, underline major points. 2, a vertical line, so point to a passage too long to be underlined. So you're just putting like a line in the margin.
Yeah, showing you like read this paragraph or read these 4 lines or whatever, right?
Star, then fold the page, most important passage. So star, then fold the page for the most important passage. So yes, I have pages folded in my books for the most important passage. And then 4, numbers in the margin to indicate sequence of points. So sometimes some authors don't indicate that. You can see it yourself. Number of other pages. So reference pages.
Yeah. Oh, go to this page, or it made you jump back to that page. What about this?
Other pages. And 6, circling of key words or phrases. And then 7, writing in the margin. Record questions and answers. And so like I was saying before, you're having a dialogue with the author. If you had a chance to sit down with Jordan Peterson, and you're reading his book,
12 Rules for Life.
Yeah, like you're having a conversation with him. You bought his thoughts. So if he's a good writer, those answers will be in the book as you go. So I don't agree with this. And that's what I'll tell my students. I'll be like, yo, write in the margin. I don't agree with this. I hate this. I like this. This is true. This is not true. This is true because, and as you continue to engage with the book, again, you're going to get unaided reading and understanding.
And I think if you have, it also creates intentionality, right? You just laid out, 7 different approaches or things, right? But I mean, I would say, underlining, circling, star, folding, like those are things that like make them your own.
Yes.
Right. Like you just laid them out with this intention, but like you might say, okay, I'm not going to use stars. Like maybe you're going to do something different, right? Like maybe you're going to put a smiley face. I don't care. Like the idea being is like have your own method, have your own approach, but like with intentionality. I know for me, you know, I, instead of the vertical line on the side, I tend to use like boxed parentheses as a way to be like, okay, read this huge chunk. But just the point being that like have your own approach, whatever it is. But now I think the idea of like marking up your book kind of also has an intentionality difference than when you're reading it, because you're not just, oh, I finished the page. Like you're almost showing you're looking for information that you're like, I want to remember this. I don't know about you, but like I love, you know, you like when you've made notes in your Bible and then you're the pastor's preaching on that passage. Yes. And you're kind of you know, you're checking yourself also at the same time. Or you're like, you know, does that agree with what I thought before? Or does this agree with another sermon? Or what are my other sermon? Like you're calling back the things you might have learned from another sermon.
No, it's true. And that's how you read. That's how you know a person's reading the book, by the way they write in the book. And I remember there was somebody a friend of ours that goes to Grace Fellowship. He said, like, you know, if you read a book with Paul Martin, he's going to want to see writing. If you're not writing in it, he's going to say you haven't been reading it. Right? So, and these are important concepts. Like, even like if I lend my book out to somebody, you know what I say to them? Write in it.
True. That's cool.
Write in it. Because I want to see and I want to learn from what, them. And that's what I mean. Like, I'm like, write in my book.
I don't care.
I wrote in it. There's already writing in it. It's already messy. You know what I mean? Underline, write stuff so I can get something from it. And even when they borrow my stuff, they already see where my thoughts are at. They're like, whoa, D. So when people come to me and like, oh, D, can I borrow a book? They're like, wait, this was helpful. Like, I saw your thought process and where you were thinking. I'm like, oh, okay, glad it was helpful. Yeah. You know, so with that said, you know, that concludes this episode of Type Beast. And again, like,
so let me ask you a question then as we wrap up. What has changed the most about how you read a book?
I'm more aggressive in finding answers, so I'm always asking good questions before I come to it. So when people, you know, it even just book, because like, again, we can point back to the Sixth Sense report and us reading an article. So if somebody sends me an article, the first thing I'm thinking, okay, what am I looking for? What do I want? What am I trying to get from it? Because I'm not, you know, our time is precious. You know, we're married. There's dishes to wash. There's laundry to fold. There's no time. You know what I mean? There's no time to be reading.
Or recording episodes on stuff that nobody cares about.
Bro, this is the thing. So part of it is, you know, me just being a lot more aggressive and asking really good questions. So my questions get better and tougher.
Yeah. I would say I even see that with the questions, like when me and you are spitballing on an issue or a topic, right? Like the way you're asked, okay, but why do I care? But why is the audience going to care? Right? Like even just like on an issue or like an article, like, hey, okay, how can we use this? And you know, even those questions, I would say it sounds like those come from, you know, your intentionality with reading too.
And becoming a better reader and knowing what to look for. And you know what, guys, and I hope this is an encouragement to you, because like I didn't grow up as a reader. I didn't grow up in a reading culture. I've never been a good reader, or nor a good student. But you know, God is the master communicator, and He invented, you know, vocabulary and grammar to communicate to us. He wants us to know Him. We make it hard. He makes it easy. All we have to do is become better readers. Right? That's exegesis, right? That's basic hermeneutics. Like, it's basic reading skills. So the more you read, the better your writing gets, the better your understanding gets. Because like my wife said to me that the difference between my papers at the start of my years at Tyndale and to the end of it, she says, like, yeah, you write like the people you read. You sound like so-and-so now. And I was like, oh, really? Yeah. She was saying, yeah, you write like the people you read. So, you know, people read according to what they need. And if you're reading, you know, slack books, then, you know, like 50 Shades of Slackness. or whatever the case may be, you need to, check your heart and, find something that is edifying, meaning is an edifice, is in to build you up. You want to read content that adds to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's nothing wrong with, reading Harry Potter and,
Fiction.
yeah, Milk in My Coffee or Sister Soldier. But there's points where, we live in a real life and we deal with real issues. And, nonfiction is nice, but we need to get back to reality and reading books that wrestle with deep economic, social, religious, political concepts, because this is the world. Ideas. This is the world we live in. So again, I encourage you. Like, you don't have to read every page, and that's the encouraging. You don't have to read every page to understand something.
Mm-hmm.
And that was encouraging to me.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So again,
going back to the idea of the author is building whatever they're trying to build
mm-hmm.
from an argument perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But they probably almost have to start as if you know nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know something on that topic,
mm-hmm.
chances are that entire book isn't worth reading.
Yeah.
Because there's foundational things maybe that you're like, I already got this. It's like, I got this economics treatise on my desk here,
mm-hmm.
Human Action,
mm-hmm.
by Ludwig von Mises. And I've, let me see what he says on interest, or let me see what he says on this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's essentially an aggregation of his works
mm-hmm.
anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's this, economics is a little bit different, but take that principle of hey, if you know something about psychology and you're reading a book on psychology, don't spend your time spinning your wheels on the chapter on the stuff that you already learned.
Mm-hmm. And again, like, I really want to see people do well and grow in their knowledge and understanding of the world around them. So again, like, reading for information versus understanding. Reading for info is reading what is thoroughly intelligible to us. Reading for understanding is reading something you do not completely understand.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the challenge part. That's the part of, being brave and engaging books that you don't completely understand.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
so and hold on. I also want to say, and that's why I'm thankful for you, Joel, in helping me to better understand economic concepts better. You have been very helpful. Stefan has been very helpful, our intern, and our other intern, Mikhail. You guys have been very helpful to me because, because since we started this podcast, I've had to read a lot more heavier content, right? Because of you guys. So then I'm able to go between you guys and be like, okay, hold on. What was
about this?
Yeah. Yeah. What did I just read? What is this? These are things that are not intelligible to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's points where I'm getting aided learning from you guys, and there's points where I'm getting unaided, where I'm like, okay, I get it now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, guys, get the book, How to Read a Book, and learn to read a book for a change. No, and let us know if you had any more questions, what you thought about,
or let us know if there's any books you want us to
Yes.
TYPBST.
Right? Yeah. Please do, and yeah, just go get a book and improve your reading, enjoy your reading, and share your reading. Write in your books. Please don't. It's okay. You know what I used to say to my students? I used to say, I'm like, okay, I'll tell you what. I used to get mad. I was like, I'll tell you what. I'll buy you a new one. Just write in this one. I'll buy you a new one. You can put it on your shelf. You can make it look pretty. I'll buy you a new one. Just write in this one, please. That's it, okay? Yeah. If you want 2 books, I'll get you 2 books. Just write in this one.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So, hey, don't believe the hype. Read the type.